guys? Welcome to the LowKick MMA Weekly Roundup. I'm your host Ryan Galloway here with Jordan Ellis, and we've just had a break from fights this past weekend. Jordan, what have you been up to?
Not much. Chilling. I do like the breaks now, obviously, because we're in, we're in the industry now. It's nice. The UFC seems to have been, pedaled to the floor for the full year now. And when you do get a chance to breathe, it's good. But still on Saturday night, I end up watching old fights so not too much time off. But yeah, glad to be back. Glad to be back into another fight night, and we can keep rolling towards UFC 263, all refreshed and ready to go.
It's been a bit like that pedal to the metal since the COVID hit, really, because we had that big break initially when the COVID hit. And then since, March last year, it's been pretty consistent, aside from over Christmas, obviously. But back into it. Before we get into previewing this coming weekend's card, I want to speak about the last event, which we didn't get a chance to recap. But Rob Font put on a pretty flawless performance in the main event against Cody Garbrandt. I think he probably solidified himself as one of the top contenders, maybe not the number one contender. But what did you think of that performance?
Yeah, it was a really good performance. I was expecting if it played out like that, the fight, I thought Cody would get the better of it in terms of the boxing exchanges and things like that. But it just weren't. It was domination, start to finish from Rob Font. He really went out there and made a statement because he's known as the guy who's got that punching power and can take you out the game. But then he managed to show over 5 rounds that he's also a very technical fighter who can get it done against a former champion, Cody Garbrandt, still one of the best in the world, despite his recent run. So yeah, huge win for Font. As you said, he's probably one of the top contenders now. He might need one more until he gets a title shot, but he's knocking on the door. It was a great win, really good win for Font.
Yeah, that jab was causing all kinds of problems for Garbrandt in that one. He just never got a chance to get started. And at times when he'd come forward, he'd find success, but he just couldn't find any opportunities to come forward because Font was just so consistent with that jab. We'll skim through a couple of the bigger fights in this card, then we'll move on. The other one I really wanted to bring up was the co-main event where Yan Xiaonan took on Carla Esparza. A lot of people thought that Yan was going to have the advantage here because she hadn't been taken down a lot prior, and obviously her striking looked to be really impressive, but Esparza's grappling is something else, and she was able to get her first finish in quite a while, I believe.
Yeah, she's a killer, Carla Esparza. I'm a big fan. I thought this fight would be close, and we'd get it like a lot of these fights are split decisions or really tight decisions. But Esparza went out there and she made a statement, and she finished a girl who a lot of people were hyping up as the next big thing, and Esparza went out there and absolutely smashed her. So I want to see her go on and get the title shot. She's already got a win over Rose. I think that's 5 wins in a row now. So I think it all makes for, a really good fighter, and I think that's what we should get next. Whether that actually happens, I'm not sure.
And last one before we move on from this card, Jack Hermansson took on Edmund Shabazian. Seemed like a bit of a mismatch in my opinion. I thought that after the last fight, initially I thought this would be a fair fight, like even fight, but on the night it just looked like the grappling was too much for Shabazian. He was able to put on a bit of a performance in the first round. He seemed to win that first round, but from the second and third it was just Hermansson all day. And I think we should have expected this given what Brunson was able to do to him not that long ago.
Yeah, I think it's we do praise the UFC matchmakers quite a lot, but on this occasion, I think they've got it wrong. In my opinion, Jack Hermansson is a better fighter than Derek Brunson, and if them 240 would get the win. So to put Shabazian after getting dominated by Brunson into that fight, for me, it seemed a bit harsh. You've got to give the guy a bit of room to get his confidence back, get his mojo back, and give him an opportunity to actually work on that wrestling if it's a problem. You've got to look at the UFC and you've got to look at whoever's managing Edmund and say they've done the fighter a disservice there, because he's still one of the brightest prospects in MMA, and I don't think it does him any favors moving forward, feeding them to these killers right now. I think it's okay to drop down a few levels. There's not an issue with it when you're 23 years old. I really hope that's what we see next. I hope we see him drop, down the rankings a bit. And he can gather some momentum, get back to winning ways, work on his wrestling in the meantime, and then he can still be a champion. He's a great fighter. I
believe Shabazian versus Holland would be a fun one. What do you think about that matchup?
Yeah, well, there's no worrying about, take down there. Yeah. I think he'd be fine. I think they'd both be relishing that matchup, actually, because no one's going to be trying to take the other one down, and they're both, lightning on the feet. So that'd be a fun fight. But I think Shabazian just needs to do what Holland is doing right now. He's over at AKA with Daniel Cormier and all them lot. trying to work on his wrestling. Shabazian's got to do the same, because once he's able to stuff them takedowns, keep it on the feet, he's going to be knocking all these top guys out. So, forced to be reckoned with. Bad matchmaking. He done well in the first round, but obviously there was a big, gulf in class on the floor, and he needs to work on that.
100%. Well, we'll move on from that one. Obviously, this coming weekend, we have the heavyweights, Jairzinho Rozenstruik versus Augusto Sakai in the main event at the UFC Fight Night. A bit of a heavyweight dominant card, this one, looking at the whole thing here. I mean, the main and the co-main event are all ranked heavyweights, and this main event should be an exciting one, I'd imagine. What do you think about this matchup?
Yeah, it's a really good one. Just because Jairzinho's been at the upper echelons for a while now, you would lean towards him. But every time I've seen Sakai, he's looked really good. I think even that Overeem fight, he was winning that fight until Overeem clocked that he had an advantage on the floor. So it's a really 50-50 fight. I think Rozenstruik, who did he fight last time? Was it Volkov?
Cyril Gane.
Cyril Gane last time. He looked, let's be honest, he looked terrible in that fight. And I've never really seen Sakai look bad. So I'm still edged towards Rozenstruik, just because we have seen him, on his way up. He's been prolific, in terms of knocking out Overeem, knocking out Dos Santos, Orlovsky. These guys, I think Sakai is more of a, he's a pop shotter, and I just personally don't like that style at heavyweight, because the longer you're in there, the more likely you are to get hit by one of these guys. It only takes one. So I do edge towards Rozenstruik, but it's a really good, fun fight, and I always like seeing these heavyweight cards, because lots of knockouts, hopefully.
Well, see, every time that I think that Overeem fight was really telling, right? Because both guys have fought Overeem, and you saw Rozenstruik lost every single round to Overeem until the last 10 seconds and found himself with a knockout. Whereas Sakai was very, very competitive with Overeem, and he arguably was winning the fight, and Overeem went out there and found a finish in the 4th, I believe, or maybe early in the 5th. But I think technically it will be no surprise to anyone that Sakai's got an advantage here. But with Rozenstruik having that power, I just think he's going to land something. I think he's going to put him out. He's got everything to gain from this win and too much to lose, right? Because he's, 2 losses in a row now? Ngannou and then Gane. And maybe there's another one in there, but I believe that it's 2 in a row at least. And he really does need a win here. He's probably been training in terms of facing someone who's more of a technical striker, especially coming up against Gane. And I just don't think Sakai has the physical attributes that Gane does. Like, Gane's really lengthy. He's fast. That's one of his biggest things, his speed, which I just don't see in Sakai's game. And we could see 5 rounds of quite a boring heavyweight fight. But I think I would wager my luck that we'll see Rozenstruik get back in the win column with a knockout here.
Yeah, I think he had a win over Dos Santos, sandwiched between them 2 losses. But it's that last one against Gane was a worrying sign, because he stopped throwing. He just literally didn't do anything. And Gane didn't really come out of that fight with any credit, because he didn't have to do much to beat Rozenstruik. He just kind of had to stand in front of him and throw the odd leg kick. So if Rozenstruik turns up like that again, maybe he's shot shy, maybe he's getting old. And I'm not sure how old he is. I think he's mid-30s. But maybe we've seen the best of him, and that's a worry. But I don't think we have. I think Sakai is good. Sakai is basically, he's not known as a puncher, so I don't think there's a power element to be feared. And also, his output is really strong, so he's going to leave gaps in terms of Rozenstruik to go out and kind of uncork that punch. And I just said it's very interesting the fights they both had against Overeem, because Sakai lost, but he looked better than Rozenstruik did in that fight for the majority of it. So it really is. It's a really good matchmaking piece of matchmaking, and I know we've just been bashing them before, but this one's a really good one. And I'm edging Rozenstruik. I just think at heavyweight, having that firepower, having that KO punch is very important, and that's what gives him that edge for me.
So we're both taking Rozenstruik in this one?
Yeah.
All right. I think the point of this card seems to be in the co-main and the main event to set up the timeline for the winner from both these fights to fight, right? Because you look at the rankings between them all, they're all very similarly ranked, and I expect the winner or even the losers of both these fights to be matched up next. But in the co-main, we have Walt Harris and Marcin Tybura. I see this as more of this one could be a stinker. This one could be pretty boring. But saying that, There could be, but they're both heavyweights, right? So there could be a knockout in this one. I expect Tybura to have a pretty wrestling heavy game, though. Try and take Harris down and get some work done on the ground. I'm not sure who I pick in this one. Do you have any thoughts?
It depends how the fight goes, doesn't it? Really, because Walt Harris is a bit of a knockout artist, so he's going to be wanting to get this on the feet, and he'll do it quick. The longer this fight goes, I think it does tip towards Tybura. I do think he's on a good run lately, but his last win was over. I think it was Greg Hardy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And he was like for a round there. I know he won, but for a round he was getting pieced up by Greg Hardy, and I think Walt Harris is a couple of levels above that. So if you're getting pieced up by Walt Harris, I think the night will be over, and that's why I do edge towards Walt. I think he looked good against Overeem in that fight, although he did lose, and I expect him to kind of rush it, go in early, and get a quick finish.
And so, do you think the winner of these fights? Do you think that's a pretty strong assessment? Do you think that made sense for the winners to face off, or even the losers? What are your thoughts on matching these 4 fighters?
I think they might try and push the winner of the main event on a bit further than this. I'm not sure how the rankings look, but I feel like Rozenstruik would consider that a step back.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't mind it either, because the Rozenstruik, he's so young in his career, but they seem to be pushing him really quickly into these big fights, and I'm sure it's off whatever he's saying to the UFC guys. But although he's older, I think he's 33, I think he can still take your time and work your way through these contenders. So I'd love to see him in with Tybura or Harris next. I just don't think that's what's going to happen. I think he'll push on to the top 5 pretty quickly after this.
Well, I guess we'll see. We'll keep picking out these fights and breaking them down. Did you have thoughts on the Dolidze versus Staropoli fight?
Well, Dolidze, is he coming off a first loss, isn't he? Yeah, his first loss.
Yeah.
He's another guy. Is he Georgian? I'm sure he's Georgian. Yeah, he's Georgian. And you see all these guys, they get a lot of hype around them, and he was hyped up, and he lost that last one, so he'll be keen to get back in the win column, and I expect them to do it against Strapoli, who I think this is his first fight at middleweight as well, so and he's on the back of a 2-fight losing streak, so it seems like he's been forced into this move, and Dolidze's got a chip on his shoulder, so I expect him to kind of take it out on Staropoli in this one.
And let's not forget his decision. He's lost in his last fight to Trevin Giles was a decision, so it's not like he went out there and got finished or anything. If I had to just play MMA maths, I'd take Dolidze in this one too. In terms of breaking down the fight, I'm not sure how this one goes, but I think Dolidze's a safe bet. Before that, though, we have Santiago Ponzinibbio returning once again. This is his second time after a huge layoff. Obviously, he got knocked out in his return, taking on Miguel Beza, which I think is a very tough fight. And I think the matchmakers are giving him another big challenge, right off the bat. They're not giving him any chance to settle back in. They're just throwing him killers.
Yeah, well, I thought that the last fight was one to kind of settle him back in, but boy, was I wrong. What's that guy's name? Jilingyang, or I'm probably murdering his name, but basically, I expected that was a nice fight for Ponzinibbio. I thought it's a nice fight. Obviously, he's a good fighter, but he's not someone that is unbeatable in terms of. I think Magny had a win over him, and then Ponzinibbio had a win over Magny. So, as we know, MMA math doesn't work, and he got absolutely slept. And I think he's in for another tough night here, because the Ponzinibbio we all knew as this killer, this top welterweight, he's probably not there anymore. He's been sat on the sidelines for so long. And now he's coming up against a tough 28-year-old who's been killing everyone. It's a tough fight, but these are the fights he's got to be in to get himself back to where he was. And a big knockout win here over a young prospect who's got a lot of hype behind him. Ponzinibbio's back in the mix. I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's going to go the other way. What do you think?
I don't know. This is a tough one to pick because Ponzinibbio for a longest time was one of those guys that people thought was the dark horse of the division. He thought he was a top contender. And he come back, he looked kind of gun shy, he looked too scared to throw, and he ended up getting knocked out in the first. Whereas Beza's just looked incredible through all these fights. He's 10-0, I believe. He's pretty well-rounded. He's got a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I just think that Beza has more ways to win this fight, and he's shown recently, especially in 2020, he's shown that he's capable of winning against UFC caliber competition. Whereas Ponzinibbio has shown that back in the day, but since he's come back, maybe Li Jilang, I believe his name was, maybe he was just a tough test, right? Maybe he was just the better man on the night, and Ponzinibbio comes into this one looking like he did before and just dominates him. But it's hard for me to pick him having seen his last fight and then seeing Baza's last 2 fights. One thing I will add on this, though, for Baza to get this fight is massive because Ponzinibbio, while he's not a ranked fighter anymore, he's a name. People know him. And if he gets a win over Ponzinibbio in this one, he's going to get a ranked opponent next, I guarantee it.
Yeah, it's a huge opportunity, to take these names. And as you said, although the ranking isn't beside Ponzinibbio's name anymore, the credibility still is, even after that last loss. I think people might just think, oh, he was rusty, he got caught cold, he'll be better this time. So to get a win against Ponzinibbio is still a huge deal. And as you said, I'm with you. I think he'll go on towards ranked opponents. And he's undefeated welterweight in the UFC in these big opportunities now. So it's all system goes if he gets a knockout win here.
It's interesting because, is it Sean Brady who's fighting Kevin Lee? Someone's fighting Kevin Lee as undefeated welterweight as well. There's so many guys at welterweight that are undefeated and they're just giving them these unranked but named fighters to give them that push into the rankings. It's quite interesting how they're building them. But any last thoughts before we move on from that one?
No, well, that's what Dan Hardy was saying. He was saying the reason he didn't kind of want to stick around in the UFC is because they weren't going to give him the fights he wanted. They were going to put him in with one of these young killers where he wants to fight, the Cerrones, the Nick Diaz's, but that's not what they do. The UFC aren't in the business of giving anyone an easy fight. So, the young lion, as we've seen with Shabazian last time, he goes straight back in with these killers, and it is a pair of killers, and one of them's going to make it victorious and, crack onto the ranks now.
Yeah, 100%. We'll keep rolling on. Tom Breeze on the card. I know you like to watch Tom Breeze when he fights. What do you think of that matchup against Antonio Arroyo?
Yeah, he's one of our guys, Tom Breeze. He's one of them. He seems to be up and down throughout his career. Obviously, he lost that last one against Akhmedov, but I think he looked good at times in that fight and before that. He looked good too. So since he's lost as he's kind of been win one, lose one. He's coming off a loss. I'm going to stick with that pattern. I hope he gets a win in this one and expect him to.
Yep, interesting fight, and that rounds off the main card. I think this is a sleeper bout on the prelims, the feature prelim. Makes sense that it's a feature prelim. Mac Wanamakanni against Nate Landauer. I think that is a great fight. I think that should be a really fun fight to watch. Do you disagree with me? I see you shaking your head. What do you think?
I think it's off, that fight, because I was looking at my card and I'm almost sure it's off. Amakanni's fighting someone else now. Nate is out. I remember seeing this last week, and then I thought you speak because the top of my card is Montana De La Rosa against Lipsky. So that's why I'm shaking my head. I was like, where's he getting this one from? Yeah, Nate's out. Amakanni's fighting, from what I can see, Kamula Kirk.
Right.
Featherweight bout.
Well, that is a shame because I was really excited about that one. But, that'll happen these days, especially with COVID and everything. Not sure who Kamala Kirk is, so can't really break that one down for you, but I do enjoy watching Amakanni fight, so hopefully it's a good one. We'll move on then. Another bout on the prelims I'm interested in is Tanner Boser against Ilir Latifi at heavyweight. I believe Latifi's last fight at heavyweight was against Derek Lewis. Am I correct in saying that?
I'd imagine so. He's been at heavyweight for a while now, hasn't he? He's a short but stacked guy, and it's three in a row at the minute for Latifi. So he really needs a win, and it was against Derek Lewis. And the thing you can take credit in is that he survived all 3 rounds. And from what I can remember,
I thought he won.
Competitive. Yeah, it was a pretty competitive fight. So and as we know, Derek Lewis is about to get a title shot. So there's not much difference between being Latifi, who I don't even think ranked at this point, and being a potential contender at heavyweight. So, a bit of momentum is all it takes. And Tanner Boser is someone he's got a chance to, go in and do that against. I think Boser's coming off a loss as well. Yeah, to Arlovski. So good fight. I'd expect Latifi to win it. I think he's mixed it with the better guys. I think he's probably beaten the better guys as well. And even at heavyweight, I think he should have the best of this one.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. One thing I just don't want to bring up, I know it's not really related, but surely Alexander Gustafsson's ready to make his return soon, right? I know he came in heavyweight, fought Werdum, got submitted, but he's been out. If he returns, do you think he comes back at heavyweight, and do you think potentially a matchup with someone on the level of Boser or Latifi could be a good comeback fight for him?
Yeah, or Arlovski or someone like that. As I said, I know he's an older guy and I know he's been there and done that, but just ease yourself in, because not every fight's got to be a make or break fight, you know what I mean? So, and I did actually think that with the Werdum fight, but I didn't think Werdum had much left in terms of, competing at that level, and he just got caught, and that's what happens when you're with him on the floor. You can get caught. So yeah, I like to see him go back in against maybe the winner of this, or Latifi's obviously a teammate, so it won't be him. But if Tanner Bosa wins, maybe that one, or Orlovsky or someone like that. So yeah, I hope he comes back. I prefer him at heavyweight. I think his days in terms of being a top light heavyweight contender are pretty much over now. But I feel like he's got a lot to offer, and he can work his way into the ranks at heavyweight. He just needs the right opponents, and he needs to be in the right mindset.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I didn't realize they was teammates with Latifi, so that wouldn't make sense at all then. Back to the card. There's a few more fighters on here that stick out to me. I'll throw it to you to pick up the ones you want after, but obviously Francisco Trinaldo's back against Muslim Salikov. That's a fun fight. Any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, Trinaldo's one of them guys. He's still as legit as they come. I'm 42 years old. I'm not one for picking 42-year-olds. I always say, once you're in your 40s, I'm probably picking against you, and that's just, maybe that's ageism on my side. But Trinaldo, he just seems to be one of them guys you can never back against. He's beat Bobby Green, Makdessi, and Jai Herbert on the bounce now. That's very, very, very impressive from Trinaldo. He had a bit of issues with the weight last time, but hopefully he gets that sorted. I think he might have jumped up, actually. Yeah, I think he's jumped up to welterweight in this one. Yeah, so new weight after last time, and he's in with a killer who's also on a long win streak. So good fight. I like Trinaldo, and if Salikov is not the real deal, Trinaldo will find out, and we will find out on the weekend.
Yeah, that fight with Jai Herbert was vicious, right? Because he was losing the whole thing, and then in the third, he just catches Herbert and puts him down. And Herb Dean had a little bit of a late stoppage in that one, but we won't talk about that. Should be a fun fight, though. Excited to see what happens in that one. I believe Mason Jones is another one of the guys from your area. Am I correct?
Yeah, and he's from Wales. Former Cage Warrior, 2-weight champion in Cage Warriors, and he come to the UFC, and he looked fantastic in his debut. He didn't get the win, but he looked fantastic. He showed everything he needed against a really tough fighter as well. So he had the chin, he had the heart, he showed everything he needed. And Alan Patrick's not an easy touch either. So Mason will need to be on it. And I'm backing him to get the win. I think he's a top talent, and I think eventually he'll be a contender. And it all starts with beating Alan Patrick on this weekend. So good luck to him.
Yeah, 100%. I remember that fight. I can't remember who it was against. I'm blanking, but his debut was a vicious war, and it could have gone either way, to be honest. But hey, he'll come back and try and get in the win column, and we'll see how he goes against Alan Patrick. Another fight on this card that is quite intriguing to me is Sean Woodson versus Yusuf Salall, featherweight bout. Salall obviously coming off back-to-back losses, taking on Sean Woodson. Do you think anything about this fight? Any thoughts on this one? What do you think?
Yeah, well, two people with a lot of hype, I think, before the latest losses. I think Salall was on a nice win streak in terms of his UFC, and it was all going well, and then it just went. And now it's 2 losses back to back, and he's kind of backs against the wall. Time to make something happen, but he's 24 years old. He's clearly talented. I expect him to, look good in this one. Sean Woodson
had that loss in his last one.
He was one of the biggest favourites. I think he was the biggest favourite on the card by a million miles when he lost to Julian Rosa. But Julian Rosa's gone on, and he's done some good stuff. I think he beat Nate, who you were talking about before. So yeah, I think it's a really good fight between two guys who need to make something happen. I would edge towards Salall. I think he is he's a crafty striker, isn't he? And I think he might be able to get a decision in this one.
All right, and the last fight I want to bring up, just because Jordan Levitt in his last fight slammed his opponent and knocked him unconscious, so it'll be fun to see him back. Not sure how he matches up with Claudio Puelles, because I'm not familiar with him as a fighter, but excited to see Levitt back.
Yeah, Levitt's kind of a breath of fresh air in terms of the MMA world, because he's just a different type of character, isn't he? And I think we're going to enjoy watching his rise, because he's really crafty on the floor. He does these weird things, and then at the end he's doing the splits, and he's just a different type of character. And he kind of reminds me of Roxanne Modafferi. He's just a different type of guy we're not used to seeing in the MMA circles, and it's and he looked fantastic in his debut. So he's a killer as well. So as you said, I'm looking forward to seeing him in this one too. And it's it's a tough fight against someone coming off the back of 2 wins. So he won't lie down easy. And it's a great fight to open the card. This is it's a quietly stacked card. Obviously it's not the strongest main event, but there's lots of fights that I'm really looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, that's kind of why I picked through the fights instead of just going straight down the list this time. But that's pretty much all the ones I want to bring up there. Is there anything I missed in your opinion?
No. Yeah. Surprisingly good card, actually, after we've gone through it. Like, the main event, it's not, it's not going to sell any, it's not going to drag in the casuals, but it's fun. It's a heavyweight fight, so we could just see, something crazy happen. And then it's just a card dotted with potential, contenders, young prospects, and people needing a win. Really fun card.
Yeah, no, it should be a good one. We'll jump to news. And before we get into MMA news, I want to hit you with the I told you so. Last time we spoke, you were pretty confident that they were going to do Anthony Joshua versus Tyson Fury and then do the Wilder trilogy after it. I brought up the fact that it was contractually obligated, and look, here we are. Wilder's taking on Fury on July 24th, I believe. Thoughts on that?
Well, it's very fishy because apparently that weren't an issue. Like the arbitration, I think all Deontay Wilder wanted was paying off, not necessarily a rematch, and then all of a sudden he's got a rematch. So I would say that's the Americans and whatever's going over there doing something dodgy to prevent this fight. Tyson Fury is being led the wrong way. It's terrible that we're not getting it, to be fair. Like I just feel like this is the problem with boxing. It just you just know you're not getting the best fights. And the thing about with MMA, Dustin Poirier, Conor McGregor 3, that's a huge fight. As soon as that fight was over, they're talking about the trilogy, and you just have full confidence that no matter what happens, they're going to get it done. Whereas boxing, I'm getting told, obviously everyone's getting excited, but then you're sitting there anxious that, you probably know it's going to go tits up somewhere. So that is the problem with the sport, the fact that we're not getting the fights, and the fact that Tyson Fury was pretty happy to go ahead and sign that bout agreement with that Deontay Wilder and leave all the belts on the table and leave all that money. It's a weird sport. I'm very disappointed, and hopefully we get it later this year. But obviously, I won't, and I hope boxing fans won't be holding their breath because it's just a letdown.
I'll play devil's advocate here. I think that if you look at the way the first two fights went, the first one was quite even. I wouldn't say that either party a draw made sense to me, right? Because Wilder did the most damage. He got 2 knockdowns in the fight, whereas Fury won probably most of the rounds, right? So I feel like a draw is pretty content there. The second fight, Fury goes out there and just smashes Wilder. But that really came down to game plan, because I don't think Wilder was prepared to fight going backwards. And when it started happening, he had nothing to offer. So maybe in this one, he can make adjustments and we get a better fight. And who knows? Maybe Wilder puts adjustments together and throws a massive counter and knocks Fury out. Then we get a 4th fight. And then a 5th fight after that. And then we never get the Anthony Joshua fight. What do you think?
Yeah, and I think that's the ideal world between, PBC and Fox and Bob Arum. I think that they'll just want them two to fight 50 times if they can. Because for me, that first fight, Fury won by a million miles. I think obviously you got the 2 knockdowns, but besides that, he didn't win. He didn't win a second of that fight, Deontay Wilder. The second round, and that was Fury coming off the couch of being 400 pounds or whatever he was, depressed and on the verge of suicide. He got up and still beat him, in my opinion. Then he knocks him out the second time. Then Wilder talks all this trash about, glove tampering and juice and getting spiked and just chatting absolute rubbish. Like, I just don't want to see the fight. I don't think Wilder is on that level. I just don't think he is. I think he's had a really nicely padded record, and they've got him into a position where his best win is Luis Ortiz, who is 50 years old and who knows how old. Like, that's his best win before this Fury trilogy, and he's just robbing a living. And I think he would have been happy to step aside. I think if they actually get, here's 10 million, you can fight the winner, step aside. But I think Team Fury have kind of said, no, we're not doing that, and they've went ahead with it for some other reason. So really disappointing as an Englishman not to get that fight. I think everyone in boxing should be disappointed we're not getting that fight. And it was going to clash with UFC's potential card in London as well. So it would have been a great night for us. I'll still be watching. I expect Fury to do the same, much of the same. I don't think Wilder at this stage of his career can make the changes needed to compete with Fury. I think it'll be similar. I think it might even be quicker. And hopefully Joshua comes through, whoever he fights, and we get that fight in December.
Look, I think that's why we need these fights to happen in boxing. Is like you said, like you claim, Wilder's record is padded. You think he's the best competition with Luis Ortiz. You could say the same arguments for a Fury or a Joshua, and their like biggest win before, obviously for Fury beating Wilder, was against Klitschko, right? So I feel like you need these fights to really tell who is the better guy. And yes, Fury is the best in the world right now. There's really no denying that. You saw what he did to Wilder in that fight. But to say that he stacks up that well against an Anthony Joshua, you need to see it. You can't do it on paper. MMA maths doesn't work. Same way boxing math doesn't work. We need to see this fight. Ideally, I hope they wrap up this trilogy in July. No, whoever wins, right? Even if Wilder goes out there and puts him to sleep in 2 rounds, I don't want to see it again. I don't want a 4th fight. I think that either one of them should move on. The winner should move on and fight Joshua. If Wilder beats Fury, I want to see Wilder versus Joshua. If Fury beats Wilder, I want to see Fury versus Joshua. So yeah, they just can't keep doing this thing over and over again. I think we'll move on. Any last thoughts before we move on for that one?
No, there's just no appetite at all for this fight. Like I don't understand why they seem so keen to make it. And as I said, I think Deontay Wilder would have been happy to sit on the sidelines, take a bunch of money, and a guaranteed shot at the winner. Mm-hmm. So it's a weird move, and it's just boxing, isn't it? It's just boxing, and that's why I'm so glad I'm an MMA fan, because we get the fights we want. We get them pretty much immediately. We don't have to wait. This John Jones and Ngannou fight, we've been waiting for it for how long have we been waiting? About 6 months. Yeah. And that feels like forever as an MMA fan. As you've seen with Floyd and Pacquiao, we waited 6 years for that. By the time it come round, it might have done a load of numbers, but the actual quality of the fight was rubbish. It was a terrible fight. And no one actually remembers the fight. You just remember the build up and how long it took to get there. So I hope we don't get that with this. I hope they can sort it out. And I do fully expect Fury to deal with Wilder again, and hopefully we can press on. Imagine they try and make a 4th. Oh my god!
Yeah, I think Fury's going to take a win there too, but wouldn't it be something if they went for the 4th? Move on. I think this is more like a drama-y thing, but I don't know if you saw Alexander Volkanovski's comments about coaching against Ortega on The Ultimate Fighter. He said he was fake, so it seems like there's a bit of tension there. What do you think about all that?
Yeah, that's about as mean as these two guys get. He's kind of fake, and I didn't particularly like him. It's like, it's not the best 2 coaches to pick, because they're both nice guys, and from everything it seems like it's going to be a really friendly, season. But the best Ultimate Fighter seasons, in my opinion, the ones where there's a bit of needle, there's a bit of animosity, and it might kick off at any second. So I'll be tuning in anyway. But it's and Kobe Covington, actually riled them up and got them to actually come back and both call him a bitch. So, I think they're making something out of nothing. I think at the end, when they meet at the press conferences or whenever they see, they'll be shaking hands, and when they'll be shaking hands at the end of the fight. They're just 2 nice guys who have been matched up against each other, and I don't particularly believe that Volkanovski has this big issue with Ortega, despite what he says.
Is there anything you want to grab before I grab something else? Anything you got, Don?
Well, obviously we've got the Floyd Mayweather Logan Paul fight coming up, so be making sense to talk about that. Obviously, it's I don't know how to explain this fight. It's the craziest fight that you'll ever see. I think I really hope Floyd goes out there, doesn't play about this and pitter-pat him with his punches, just goes out and tries to put one in his chin and absolutely sleep him, because Conor McGregor, it's okay to toy with him, because Conor McGregor is actually a puncher. He can fight. Logan Paul cannot fight to save his life. So Floyd really needs to go out and make a statement in this one. So, and I'm hoping that's what we see. That's the end of Logan Paul, and then we can work on the Jake Paul stuff later.
Look, I forgot about this fight entirely, I'll admit it. And if I had known it was coming up, I would have made a big segment out of it for this episode. But I guess we'll talk about it now. What a joke this kind of is. Look at the size difference. I don't know what commissions what's it called? What commission's allowing this to happen? There's such a big size disparity, but more than that, there's such a big experience disparity between the 2 parties. I mean, Floyd Mayweather's the best boxer of all time, and he's taking on Logan Paul, who has had 1 professional boxing bout that he lost to a YouTuber. There's a bit of a difference in competition there. The size might play a factor, but I really don't think it does, because I think Floyd's just too good. He's going to land something big to the body and put Logan Paul down, and I think that'll be probably the end of it.
Yeah, the size is not going to play a factor at all. Size is a factor when you're a professional fighter and you know what you're doing. You're able to compete. So obviously, the best heavyweights in MMA or boxing would always beat the best middleweights in boxing. That's the way it works. But Logan Paul, he might be bigger, but he doesn't know how to use his size. There's no difference to me and you, or some of a tall MMA journalist going in with Floyd Mayweather. We'd still get cracked. We'd still get beat up. He's one of the best ever, and he shouldn't really hear a peep out of Logan Paul. And I really hope that's what happens. I hope he just goes in and sleeps in with the first punch of the night. You can't really hate on either guy because obviously Floyd, it's free money. Like it is literally free money. It's money for nothing. Logan Paul, he's just a YouTuber and someone's offering him this huge chance for a load. Like if you offered me whatever he's getting paid to fight Floyd Mayweather, I'd go and fight him because it's a lot of money and you're not expected to even win. You don't have to do anything. You can just roll over after the first punch if you want. So you can't hate the guys, but you kind of got to hate on Showtime and Triller and all these guys putting it together because they know it's a mismatch. They know it's a shit show, but they're just selling it. And, people are going to buy it. So I think until people switch off, we're going to keep seeing these events, but I really just hope Floyd just goes out there and finishes it early.
And look, because it's an exhibition, I will preface with this so I don't look like a clown if it does happen. They're both businessmen. They both want money. There's a high chance, I think there's about a 50%, maybe a 30% chance that Floyd Mayweather throws this one just so they can rematch it and then do a trilogy afterwards. They're both businessmen. I wouldn't put it past them. I really hope it doesn't happen because that would be the dumbest thing in boxing like in the last decade probably. But I think there is a very high possibility that something like that happens here. Or a draw, something. It's an exhibition. It's not like it goes on Floyd's record, so.
Yeah, well, the exhibitions we've seen with the Tyson, Roy Jones one is that they don't really come to fight as like they would body spar and basically Tyson and Jones. There was no real headshots. And then at the end, although Tyson clearly won, it was declared a draw. So I don't think what happens at the end really matters. There's no controversy because it's not a real fight, as they say. So it's an exhibition. I'm sure in the contract someone says it's made for fun. So I would be surprised to see Floyd, take a dive or anything like that, just because he's a proud man, isn't he? And I don't think he's someone who's going to do that. Yeah, you'd have to pay him a lot of money on top of what he's already earning to do something like that. But I expect him to keep it going for a little while, entertain it, and then eventually get a knockout. But I wouldn't be surprised if as soon as he touches Logan Paul falls over because the longer Logan Paul's in there, he's going to take some serious damage. Floyd's a little guy and he's not necessarily known as a puncher, but he's a professional boxer in with a, he's in with just a normal citizen. And it's just, it could get nasty if Floyd wants it to get nasty, but I don't think he will.
And just while we're still on boxing, we'll bring up Khabib Nurmagomedov confirmed that he turned down a $100 million fight with Floyd Mayweather, as well as a fight with GSP. What are your thoughts on both those?
Yeah, he's just a man of his word, isn't he? I don't think money or any of these stuff matter. I think the blessing of his mother obviously matters more. And there's certain people, obviously Floyd and Logan Paul are two of them, is you pay them enough money. And I think most people in the world are actually like this. You pay them enough money, they'll do anything. Including myself. So if Khabib's not that guy, he's got a bunch of money, he's comfortable, he's enjoying retirement by the looks of it, and he's happy, sticking by the side of his mother. So credit to him. I don't mind that. And I also, why do I want to watch Khabib box? Khabib is not a good boxer. So he's better than Logan Paul, but he's not much. He's not much better. He's a wrestler. That's what he's known for. And I think he should stick to that. If he wants to come back and make a bunch of money, he should come back to the UFC, and I'm sure he will.
Yeah, to fight GSP, which he turned down already. So do you think he does come back? You said I'm sure he will.
I think he will. If Charles Oliveira beats Dustin Poirier, I think he'll come back because there is a question mark there. He hasn't beat Charles. And if Charles goes on to cement himself as a legit, true champion who is able to deal with all comers, I think Khabib will, start to hear the talk about, is Charles the lightweight GOAT? Is Charles better than Khabib? You'll hear that, and he's a competitor, and he's an MMA competitor more than anything. So he'll come back and he'll want to, set that record straight. That's what I think he'll do. I think competitiveness will get the better of him in the end. I think it just might be a year or two down the line.
I hope so. I really want to see him fight again, but I just don't think we do. And like I was thinking about it yesterday, like if he had fought GSP now, GSP is what, 40 years old, maybe older than that. It's like, do I really want to see a Khabib who's in his prime taking on GSP, who he probably, we don't know, but he doesn't look like he's in his prime. Even that Bisping fight, he didn't look great in that first round. Obviously he came out and found a submission. He dominated when he won. But I just didn't think he looked like phenomenal in that fight. So what, we're 5 years removed from that. How's he going to look against Khabib, who is the greatest lightweight we've ever seen? You know, who do you think, like, in 2022, if they had that fight, do you think GSP has any shot?
Well, the problem is this fight's not makeable because the weight issue. I think Khabib wants it at 155, and George St. Pierre at 40 years old, it cannot make 155. So how are they going to do it?
They offered it to him at 165.
165, yeah, it makes a bit more sense, but at the same time, I'm not sure. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think GSP flirts with the idea. Khabib will flirt with the idea, but it's now or never really, because Khabib, as we say, George is in his 40s now, or he's getting there, 39, 40 years old. So it's now or never, and it seems like Khabib's said never.
Yeah, it does seem like that. Anything else? We'll wrap it up there.
No, we can wrap it up. It's been great chatting, a little week off, and I'm glad to get back into the fights. We've got, obviously a great card in the UFC. Really fun fights there. We've got the circus the day after on the Sunday, and then we roll on to next week with a huge card. So can't wait.
Yeah, when we speak to you next, we'll be recapping these events. Obviously, Rozenstruik versus Sakai, Logan Paul versus Floyd Mayweather. And then, we do have UFC 263, I believe, which has 3 massive fights at the top of that one. Can't wait to get into the goes. But thanks for watching, guys. We'll speak to you then.
Thanks, guys.
Make sure to subscribe to the LowKick MMA YouTube channel for all the latest news, event previews, and interviews with some of the biggest stars in MMA.